Over the years, we've seen a lot of different Pokemon designs. Every generation thus far has introduced at least 100 Pokemon up until Gen 6, but even then Gen 6 introduced quite a few Mega Evolutions as well. So, as one might imagine, choosing a favorite Pokemon from each generation is a rather tough task. Even still, for me there's quite clearly one Pokemon in every generation that has stood out from the others. From the perspective of design, usefulness, and just general awesomeness, these Pokemon are, in my humble opinion, the best of the best. As such, today I'm here to tell you guys my favorite Pokemon from each of the generations, as well as discuss some of my hopes for future generations in terms of the new Pokemon they introduce. Also, I should mention that this is actually part of the Generations Community Tag Challenge, so at the end of the video, I'm going to be tagging 3 YouTubers to do the exact same thing as me and name their favorite Pokemon from each generation. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into this, folks. Generation 1, Gyarados. I'm sure that you guys saw this one coming from a mile away, since Gyarados is my favorite Pokemon after all. I seriously cannot express in words just how much I freaking love this thing. For one, the concept behind its evolution is absolutely epic. The thing starts off as a helpless little Magikarp before turning into the all-powerful Gyarados. In many ways, Gyarados teaches the important lesson that even the weakest of creatures can turn into a big and powerful badass. Also, Gyarados is the epitome of a bulky water-type Pokemon. Its only weaknesses are electric and rock, but even then this Pokemon excels against rock types by virtue of its water-type moves. On top of that, it's got great defensive stats in base 95 HP, 79 defense, and an excellent base 100 special defense. Finally, I personally think that Gyarados is incredibly unique in that it's a physical attacker despite being a water type. Physical attacking water types are certainly more common nowadays than they used to be, but even still, I think this is something that sets Gyarados apart from other water types. So for all those reasons, Gyarados is my favorite Pokemon from Generation 1. Generation 2, Houndoom. I'm sure that you guys also saw this one coming from a mile away, since Houndoom is my second favorite Pokemon of all time. You all already know how much I love Dark and Ghost types, but combine this with a Fire typing, and you've got a really unique Pokemon. To this day, Houndoom remains the only Dark and Fire type out there, which I think is pretty awesome. In addition, while I wouldn't necessarily say it's a top tier Pokemon, Houndoom's stats are pretty solid. It's got a great base special attack of 110, and its base physical attack is also not too bad at base 90, which allows it to take advantage of a phenomenal, albeit somewhat gimmicky, priority move in Sucker Punch. The only thing that really sucks about Houndoom are its defenses, especially on the physical side. Despite how much I love Houndoom on a personal level, even I can't deny that it's frail as all hell. Finally, I actually enjoy Houndoom's Mega Evolution quite a bit. While I would have preferred a normal evolution for it, Mega Houndoom improves upon normal Houndoom stats quite a bit with an even more demonic design. So overall, Houndoom is an awesome Pokemon, which is exactly why it's my favorite from Generation 2. Generation 3, Swampert. This has got to be some sort of really strange coincidence, since Swampert is actually my third favorite Pokemon of all time. Meaning my favorite Pokemon of all time is from Gen 1, my second favorite from Gen 2, and my third favorite from Gen 3. Pretty strange, huh? Anyways, the reason for Swampert being my favorite third generation Pokemon is pretty simple. Mudkip was my first ever Pokemon. In fact, Pokemon Ruby was my first video game ever, so you could say that receiving Mudkip was the first thing I ever did in a video game. I still remember to this day being completely enamored with this thing as a kid and loving it to death. I also remember giving it the worst moves ever since I was pretty stupid back then. My moveset was something like Hyper Beam, Iron Tail, Blizzard, and Focus Punch. In hindsight, I don't think I could make a worse moveset if I tried. Anyways, for me, Swampert is a great Pokemon because it was one of the first to ever have the Water Ground typing, which is a really awesome typing. For one, Water Ground gives it no weaknesses outside of Grass, and for two, it's a very interesting combination of opposites. I think it's incredibly cool how 3rd Gen was centered around the conflict between land and sea, when Swampert itself is the combination of land and sea. I also personally really like its design, although I have my doubts that others agree with me on that. Anyways, the point is that Swampert is amazing, and for that reason it's my favorite Gen 3 Pokemon. Generation 4, Glaceon. I hate to break the trend since Glaceon isn't my 4th favorite Pokemon of all time, but it comes really close. I'll be the first to admit that Glaceon isn't really the best Pokemon in terms of usability, nor is it the best evolution, but I still love it to death. For one, pure ice types are actually rather rare in Pokemon, so Glaceon is already pretty unique in that sense. Also, I'm usually not one to say this type of thing, but holy hell is Glaceon cute. Game Freak actually did a phenomenal job with its design if you ask me. Moreover, this thing might just have the most interesting stats of any evolution. It's got an excellent base 130 special attack, but what's simultaneously weird and cool is the fact that it has a base 110 physical defense, which at the time when it first came out was really weird for an ice type. I actually used a Glaceon named Gray in a recent playthrough of Pokemon Platinum, and let me tell you guys, this thing was a defensive monster. I realized that in competitive battling, Glaceon isn't really the tankiest Pokemon, but it actually works out pretty well in game where trainers don't have specialized EVs. In sum, Glaceon is a really cool Pokemon, and for that reason my favorite from Generation 4. Generation 5, Chandelure. I would make the argument that Chandelure is one of the most unique Pokemon ever created. It's the only Pokemon from Game Freak that's Ghost and Fire, and given that Ghost is my favorite type, I'm sure you guys can see why I love this thing so much. Also, Chandelure is ridiculously powerful in terms of pure damage output. With a ridiculous base special attack of 145, there's nothing more fun than slapping the choice specs on this thing and spamming Fire Blast. Which I realize is a rather bad set for Chandelure, but I mean come on, who doesn't love overkill? Also, this thing has surprisingly decent defenses. At first glance, you would expect Chandelure to be a complete glass cannon, and while it's far from a defensive Pokemon, base 90 defenses on both sides is actually not that bad. In game, this thing can actually take some hits occasionally. Also, I'm not sure if you guys have read the Pokedex information for Chandelure, but the reason why it has the word lure in its name is because it lures people into traps and incinerates their spirits, leaving the body behind. Which is scary and very cool at the same time. So for all those reasons, Chandelure is an awesome Pokemon and I really can't say enough good about it. Which is exactly why it's my favorite from Generation 5. Generation 6, Aegislash. I've already stated how unique all of the Pokemon mentioned so far are, but Aegislash might just be the most unique Pokemon of all time. Its ability in Stance Change is definitely one of the coolest abilities yet. If used correctly, Stance Change can effectively give Aegislash base 150 offenses and defenses on both the physical and the special side. Combine this with Priority in Shadow Sneak and Swords Dance as a boosting move, and you've got one dangerous Pokemon. Using this thing in competitive battles back before it got banned to Uber was a ton of fun. There was nothing more fun than playing mind games with your opponents using King's Shield. And at the same time, nothing more frustrating than going up against Aegislash and having to deal with the mind games it played. I also personally think that Aegislash's design is really cool. This probably isn't popular opinion, but I actually think the concept of it being a ghost sword is incredibly creative, and I might even go so far as to say it's the most creative Pokemon ever made. In many ways, Aegislash embodies all the great things about design in its creativity and very cool concept in Stance Change. So for all these reasons, Aegislash is my favorite Pokemon from Gen 6. Finally, before ending things off, I want to look ahead to the future and name a couple of hopes for new Pokemon coming in Generation 7. And by the way, these aren't necessarily objective things that I think would make the game better, but more things that I'd like to see from a personal standpoint. First of all, as a massive fan of ghost types, I want to see a lot of new ghost types in the next generation. Pokemon like Chandelure, Aegislash, and Gengar are some of my favorites, so I'd like nothing more than for them to continue their tradition and keep introducing ghost types. Secondly, we need more evolutions in the next generation. In my opinion, you can never really have too many evolutions, so I'm personally hoping that they introduce 2 more when 7th gen finally drops. Third, I'm personally looking for them to cut down on Mega Evolutions a little and give us some more normal evolutions. It would be great to see some normal evolutions for underpowered Pokemon like Luvdisc, Farfetch'd, Sunflora, and tons of others. Fourth, I would actually really like to see a new type introduced, but only if they have good ideas for it. I'm not really all that for the sound type since I feel like there are some problems that could arise and it's rather uncreative. What I think would be a cool type though is the radiation type. Actually, on second thought, I've probably just been playing too much Fallout 4. Fifth and finally, they need to introduce at least 100 new Pokemon in the next generation. I mean, the new Pokemon of Kalos were great and all, but that doesn't change the fact that there weren't nearly enough of them. Ideally, somewhere between 100 and 150 Pokemon should be introduced in Gen 7. And those are pretty much the 5 wishes I have for Pokemon in Generation 7 from a personal standpoint. Well, alright folks, that is pretty much gonna do it for this video. As always, if you enjoyed, be sure to drop me a like down below and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already for more Pokemon content in the future. Also, before ending things off, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is part of a community tag challenge, so I'm gonna be tagging 3 people in this video. If you're tagged, then all you need to do is name one favorite Pokemon from each of the different generations, choose one thing you're hoping for in the new generations, and finally tag 3 more people in your video. The 3 people I'm tagging are Defree DBZ, Delta Merix, and Magic Activator. I'll leave their links in the description, by the way, for you guys to check out, since they're also all awesome YouTubers. Otherwise, I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video.